and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, he, she, and today's pick is Liberated, The Radical Art and Life of Claude Cahun by Kaz Rowe. It was published in 2023 by Getty Publications. I think I had seen this book around a bit, but did not have easy access to it. I also thought it had been around a lot longer than just since 2023, but time is no longer real, I guess. I finally picked it up because a friend purchased it and lent it to me, although now the library does have it. Maybe this is proof of me being from a different dimension. That seems unlikely. Content notes 4, living a life where you can't be completely open about who you are, parents who are not terribly helpful, imprisonment, and Nazis. Keywords that came to mind reading this graphic biography: baby blue, gender fluid, World War II, Jewish relationships, and anti-fascism. The plot summary is, quote, creative and courageous, Surrealist artist Claude Cahun championed freedom at every turn, from rejecting gender norms and finding queer loves to risking death to sabotage the Nazis. At the turn of the 20th century in Nantes, France, Lucy Schwob met Suzanne Malherbe, and lightning struck. The two became partners both artistically and romantically, and transformed themselves into the creative personas Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore. Together, the couple embarked on a radical journey of surrealist collaboration that would take them from conservative provincial France to the vibrance of 1920s Paris to the oppression of Nazi-occupied Jersey during World War II, where they used art to undermine the Nazi regime. Cahun and Moore challenged gender rules and championed freedom at a time when strict societal norms meant that the truth of their relationship had to remain secret. Featuring 10 photographs by Cahun and Moore, this graphic biography by cartoonist Kaz Rowe brings Cahun's inspiring story to life. End quote. This book does cover a bit more of Lucy's early life than the summary would indicate, and while this is a biography, I would note that Rowe includes a lot of great wider context about what the queer community looked like around Claude and Marcel. Zooming back out again, let's take a short look at the creator behind this book, Kaz Rowe, they, them, a fellow, although wildly more successful, YouTube creator. Rowe graduated from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and describes themselves on their portfolio website as Chicago-based. Quote, Kaz's work focuses thematically on liminal identity and using fantasy as a vehicle to explore the intersections between community and purpose. Additionally, Kaz is a historical researcher and creates mini-comics dedicated to LGBT historical figures and runs a YouTube channel with lecture-style historical topics. End quote. I had not previously watched any of Rowe's work, but I dipped my toe in for this review and found it just as interesting and easy to consume as Liberated was a read. I am very interested to also read their urban fantasy webcomic, Cunning Fire, but given my TBR pile, who knows? Looking at the artwork, the first thing that jumps out at you is the limited, very light gray, baby blue, and black color scheme. A fairly common style for, although not exclusive to, queer and or nonfiction comics, but easy on the eyes and well done, so I'm not complaining, just noting. Rowe's page layouts felt very easy to follow, but still highly varied. Their use of line and color felt pretty economical, but not minimal for the sake of being minimal, just uncluttered and focused on communicating the story at hand. Looking at the writing, Rowe did go a long way to try and intertwine as many of Cahun's own words as they could in the work. Rowe states this explicitly in a note before a list of sources they encouraged readers to check out for more. While not explicitly outlined in the text, this is likely why Rowe ended up writing this biography in the first person, which feels like something more likely to happen in translated French nonfiction and more unusual in English nonfiction graphic novels, but that is just my gut reaction. Reflecting back about a month out from actually reading this title, I feel like there was surprisingly little about Cahun's art itself, with Liberated being more interested in Cahun's life and political activity, which obviously does show us many things that informed Cahun's art, and Rowe does include a number of Cahun's iconic photographs. It just seemed perhaps surprisingly thin on that front. Assuming that is not me, just totally misremembering, it still doesn't seem bad. bad, just a choice, likely informed by perceived audience and framing of the book. Biographies can certainly have angles and focuses. As someone with a tendency to infodump, curation is an important part of communication. Looking at different themes and identities I like to explore in each of my reviews, gender is probably the most explored. Living between 1894 and 1954, Cahun's exploration of gender is both familiar but also historical. For all the guesswork often involved in unearthing historical queerness, we are blessed in this case with an abundance of Cahun's own words, living in a world that can sometimes feel deceptively similar. For example, when reading up about Cahun, almost everyone besides Rowe seems to default to she/her pronouns. The reason given on Wikipedia is that Cahun mostly referred to themselves by she/her pronouns, while still describing their gender as fluid and going so far in their anti-realist, surrealist autobiography Disavowals, or Cancelled Confessions, to say, quote, masculine, feminine, it depends on the situation. Neuter is the only gender that always suits me, end quote. To my millennial era brain, this does seem to make a certain amount of sense, but with between 70 and over 100 years of culture wars and language development separating Cahun from now, I don't need a full explanation of Rowe's reasoning behind using they/them pronouns to refer to Cahun and see it as 100% valid and my preference. Although I am also a non-binary person who uses they, he, she pronouns, so I am certainly a little biased. The social construct of race/ethnicity also played a fairly central role to this biography because Cahun is Jewish and faces a lot of anti-Semitism throughout their life, starting with their mother's own anti-Semitism and obviously reaching a fever pitch, living and ultimately resisting in occupied France during World War II. In Liberated, Rowe draws a direct line between their choice of the last name Cahun for their nom de plume, Claude Cahun, to putting the connection they felt to their Jewish forefathers front and center. Looking at racial diversity from my usual vantage point, I would just note that there is only a smattering of background characters with darker skin tones. Sexuality was also a strong through line throughout Liberated. Cahun and Moore live and create in a long-term lesbian relationship that they often have to pass off as something entirely unromantic. In one of those cases of life in a homophobic society is stranger than fiction, Cahun's widowed father and Moore's widowed mother eventually got married, giving Cahun and Moore's relationship even more of a cover. As I already alluded to, I felt like Liberated, while a biography, folds in a wider context of queerness throughout the time and places Cahun and Moore traveled through. This contributed to a somewhat stronger sense of place, even as Cahun moved around a lot. Disability/ability felt like a bit of a footnote, with Cahun's mother being institutionalized while they were still very young, leaving Cahun to be raised by their paternal grandmother. Class felt perhaps the least explored of themes/identities, not necessarily in denial of Cahun's class privilege, but I also don't recall them being named as such, which is fairly average in my experience. Wrapping things up, it's hard to deny how timely this book feels, certainly a sad and stupid fact, but it's hard not to feel energized by the audacity and tenacity of Cahun. 5 stars. Bye y'all, keep reading, and remember, all colonial settler states are a lie. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.